What we're seeing over in the UK are some different types of protests once again. So UK citizens unhappy, frustrated that they're not seeing the type of honest, open debate they would expect from the media, and also they're sick and tired of the censorship. We saw protesters actually storming the office of Google and some mainstream media organizations. I've got some footage here. I'm going to show it to you right now.
They are not giving you the right information. They are silencing the lives of top professionals, top medics, top professors, virologists. So we are here today upholding the inalienable human rights of every single free man, woman and child in the UK. We represent freedom of choice, freedom of travel, freedom of speech. There is no division amongst us. We stand as one united front against tyranny. We do not consent to...
It's nice to see that the cops in the UK aren't pointing firearms at people's heads. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice of them? I mean, listen, the police in the UK obviously have not stood by the people during this very difficult time, but at least they don't have the firepower capability of, say, Victoria Police. I tell you what, there is nothing in this world more scary of unchecked power in the hands of those who are not held accountable for their actions. Is that fair enough? We see, I mean, the protest that from Saturday here in Melbourne. I tell you what, this is absolutely not over. But it's great to see people out in the UK protesting, standing up for their rights, holding the mainstream media to account. And I dare say that we in Australia need to do the same thing. What do you guys think? Do you think it would be a good idea to protest out the front of media? We know that time and time again, media in Australia, they love to paint people who are against the lockdowns as some type of unhinged mob. That you and I know that that could not be further than the truth. That's right. What we see here in Australia is the emergence of a truly polarized and divided society. We see that those who are against the lockdowns and those who consider lockdowns to be in breach of human rights, and I'm on board with that 100%, they're referred to as selfish, or people who do not want to participate in what the Federal Health Minister referred to as the world's largest clinical trial. They're considered selfish. These terms are espoused by the likes of Brad Hazard from New South Wales. So the question is, where is this all leading? We see this type of language adopted by the mainstream media that seeps into the brains of millions of Australians, who then develop the notion that the reason for lockdowns are not actually a result of government policy, but the result of, say, people who protest or people who do not want to get vaccinated. Whereas the truth is looking us in the face. What we know without any doubt whatsoever is that the existence of the Barrington Declaration is out there for everybody to see. It's been co-signed by tens of thousands of medical experts, and clearly states that we should offer protections for the vulnerable and allow the rest of us to live our own lives. And should somebody be at risk of the virus, it should be their choice if they want to expose themselves to it. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? If you knew that you were at a 90% risk of dying from COVID-19, but the vast majority of other people had some tiny fraction of a risk, would you want them to stop living their lives just because you're vulnerable and you might die? I wouldn't. I wouldn't want kids to stop playing in playgrounds because maybe I might die from something. And yet somehow we're the selfish ones because we stand up for freedom. We're we're heading towards a dangerous time of in our country's history of this polarization. The degrading rhetoric used to describe those who object to the lockdowns and mandatory vaccination is inciting violence. I have absolute proof that it's inciting violence. There was a protest in Melbourne, right? A protest in Melbourne on Saturday, and there were people who were high up in the high-rise apartment buildings throwing unidentified liquid down onto the protesters. Okay? It reminded me of scenes from Nazi Germany, Jews being herded out and being spat on by residents who would leave their homes to spit on them. And, you know, it really dawned on me that the hate campaign is working. You know, the mainstream media referring to people who attend protests as unhinged and selfish and violent. Brad Hazard referring to those who don't want to get vaccinated as selfish. David Elliott calling protesters buffheads. And it's a massive division campaign. And just like the old saying goes, divide and conquer. A citizenry that's divided is, of course, much easier to conquer. I don't know what it's going to take to get through to people, because you need to understand this is a multi-billion-dollar psychological operation, and you have millions of Australians and people around the world consuming this absolute rubbish through their television set for hours and hours per day, to the point that they honestly believe that the true enemy is their neighbor. And that's why you have situations where you have family members dobbing each other in. I'm calling Crime Stoppers because Uncle Joe went to the park and exercised for more than 2 hours. But that's the level that we've reached here in Australia. In my view, it's really, really simple. It's really simple. To me, it's black and white. Either you believe that human rights should be suspended due to this corona situation, or you do not believe they should be suspended. To me, it's really simple. And obviously, I don't believe human rights should be suspended. I don't see how they can be suspended. These are rights that we are born with. It's a matter of natural law. And it really was concerning to see. I posted some images on my social media of Victoria Police doing what they do, acting like violent thugs. And there was one particular photo of a young lady, and she was being assaulted by 2 Victoria Police officers, and one of the officers was grabbing her hair. Maybe you've seen the image. It's on my Facebook. It's so disturbing. And there are people in the comments encouraging the police and, you know, chanting and praising the police like, yeah, go and get her. Go and get that dirty anti-lockdown protester. So we're at this weird point where people are actually encouraging violence towards women because they believe that human rights should be suspended in the name of corona. What's the average age of death of corona? Can it be proven beyond reasonable doubt that corona is resulting in excess mortality? What age group is most vulnerable to corona? Are they young, healthy people who have the rest of their life to live, or are they the very elderly or people who are extremely immunocompromised? Can you explain it to me? Because am I missing something? We spend so much time trying to educate and to speak about PCR tests and to get the word of Kerry Mullis and others out there. But unfortunately, when it comes to the mainstream media, those messages fall on deaf ears. Okay, for a while, we all thought that Sky News was going to be different. But unfortunately, in my view, for the very most part, Sky News is just, in many instances, no better than the rest of the mainstream media, with a few exceptions. I like Alan Jones, most of what he says. You're never going to agree with what anyone says all the time. So that's why we have MCJ Report. That's why MCJ Report is doing well. That's why Rebel News is doing well. That's why Real Rukshan. And that's there's a market demand has emerged for independent media that does not bend at the knee to the government. Okay? Now, if you were to ask probably a lot of people in the mainstream media, not all, and by the way, there are good people that work in mainstream media, there are good people in there, but what would the producers from Channel 7 or a place like that think about the MCJ report? They'll probably think we're absolute scum. How dare you, try to call yourself this and that. To me, it's not even about that. I'll tell you what it is for me with MCJ report. I see a problem. I see questions not being asked. I see major injustice. I see a situation that's not fair. So all I do is I create a show and I talk about those things and I challenge those things. That's all we do here. I don't consider myself a reporter or anything like that. Just an Aussie who identified that there was a need for certain information to get out into the public sphere and that I could play a role in doing it. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's really not like a crazy sort of thing or anything like that. Is that fair enough? And that's why the slogan of our show is separating media and state, because in my very honest opinion, the mainstream media in our country, more often than not, vastly more often than not, resembles that of state-run media, reminiscent of the Global Times in China. So what do? We have to become the media. That's right. Unfortunately, the mainstream media in Australia holds the monopoly on narrative. That's right. They hold the monopoly on narrative. They talk about cases. They never prove beyond reasonable doubt what those cases actually are. And that language is then adopted by the general population. I will never use the word case. I will always use the word positive test result because I think it's a lot more honest. Is that fair enough? We want honesty and transparency. Just like, remember when Daniel Andrews, that absolute scumbag, Daniel Andrews, blamed the death of a young man in his 20s on COVID, and we later found out it was a drug overdose. But the young man produced a positive test result. They're so quick, aren't they? They don't need proof. They're like, oh, young person, COVID dead. I'm going to instill fear into the hearts of millions of people so they comply with what I demand of them. Daniel Andrews is a sick maniac and so many like him. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're not scared of these people. We're not scared. We're not scared at all. Someone messaged me the other day. They said, Public Order Response is investigating you, Morgan, because you posted pictures of them online. Yeah, all right, good. Good for them, okay? Fantastic. What else do you want? What else do you want? We're going to keep doing it. This is like a monologue, rambling sort of thing that's going on here, but isn't that fair, ladies and gentlemen? We're Australians. We have fighting spirit. We don't give two shits if somebody is wearing a police uniform. It does not give that person the right to assault innocent people, especially women, elderly, and children. So that's my closing monologue for tonight. Now, I'm happy to open up the floor to do some Q&A. This was, as I said, there was less content on tonight's show. I spent so much of today doing post-show production. If anyone out there has some basic video editing skills and you would like to perhaps volunteer a bit here and there to help out with MCJ report for, say, because every show needs to be chopped up into segments and then re-uploaded. And if there's anyone out there that would like to lend a bit of a hand, you can send me an email, mcjreport@protonmail.com. And yeah, because the vast majority of my day was just trying to unpack everything from last night. So thank you very much for everyone once again. But let's open up the floor to some questions. So if anyone has any questions, then go ahead, read right now. And let's get to it. Someone said, show a photo of TGA. What do you mean a photo of TGA? TGA stands for the Therapeutic Goods Administration. And we're going to be taking a big look at them because I'm not happy with them. There's Isabella. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here. That's right, Scott. That's right. Kangaroos cannot jump backwards. We don't move backwards. That's right. We're Aussies. who here has, say, parents or grandparents that went to war, or who here is a veteran and is absolutely disgusted in what the government is doing? You know, my grandfather, he didn't fight for Australia, but he fought with the Allies in World War II, so he was on the right side. I refuse to believe that he would be happy with what's going on today in our country.